Hello, hiyo. It's
Hi,
a
everyone.
family affair right now.
Yes. Thank you, Meg. Thank you, Jade. And thank you, everyone who has spoken so far. I hope everyone who's watching this month's summit is enjoying it. Loved hearing from our amazing sponsors. We have more talks after this one. And then, of course, join us tomorrow for another full day of programming. And then this Thursday and Friday for our virtual job fair. We have over 10,000 open roles that people can explore. So, really something for everyone, remote opportunities, global opportunities. But before then, I wanted to bring in two familiar faces to all of you, Hunter and Meg, who host many of our talks here at Power to Fly. And I wanted to talk to them about something that comes up all the time as a challenge for folks, which is public speaking. And you both are excellent public speakers, even if sometimes you can't see your public because we're virtual. But I'd love for to pick your both of your brains a little bit because one of the things we hear often here at Power to Fly is, oh, maybe I'm an introvert. It's a little hard for me to be a public speaker. I work in a remote office. I work in a hybrid office. So how do I stand out in those circumstances? So let's dive in because in fact, 70, you hear this all the time, but actually 75% of the people around the world say they have a fear of public speaking. I think the old Jerry Seinfeld joke is more people would like to be in the casket at a funeral than delivering the eulogy. And it's very true, I guess. But you both are constantly speaking live at our events. So, can you share a moment from your own experience when you had to push past maybe any fear that you might have had and step into the spotlight? Meg, why don't you go first?
Okay, so I'm gonna say something that no one's gonna believe, which is I actually have a fear of public speaking. I have stage fright. No one ever believes this because I grew up with a father who was a salesman and everything that that entails. So I can talk to anyone. I just get real shaky and a little bit quavery before I do. Now, Rob, you know that I've gone to a bunch of Power to Fly in-person events, but I actually only ever hosted one of them. And it was for a Deloitte event last year. And I was incredibly excited, but knew I was going to be nervous. So I do what I tend to do when I am worried something's going to go wrong. I call it out. So I got to I got to the event and it was for Deloitte. I think it was a company I'd already worked for a bunch of times and I knew a bunch of people in the room. But when we went to start the event, I just stepped up at the podium and I gave my opening and said, I'm really excited to be here today. This is actually the first Power to Fly event that I am headlining myself in person. And I'm actually a little bit nervous. So I hope that y'all will go on this journey with me. Apologies if it's a little bit squeaky or a little bit, a little unsteady. But I'm really excited to do this, and I hope that you are all excited as I am. So for me, that helped to kind of put it out there and be like, yeah, I'm nervous. We're not going to pretend otherwise, but I'm nervous because I'm excited about this, and I'm excited because of all of you. So that helped me to at least like have a context for the shakes that we're going to go with the hands that were holding my notes. Hunter, what about you? I've never seen you have a misstep in public, but I'd be curious to see if you did.
Well, I guess I'd have to say you've never noticed a misstep because I do them all of the time. I had a couple today, Meg.
Oh, this happens constantly, right? It's the
All
duck,
the
right?
time.
You're swimming around and everybody thinks you're calm and underwater those feet are kicking like crazy because you're just like, oh my gosh, where am I going with this next?
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, little missteps happen all the time. I think that's really good advice, Meg, about calling it out because what that also does when I do that, one, it uh as one of, our very own Sienna Brown likes to say, it level sets, right? Like let's level set the space. And that way it's inviting people in to where you're at. And immediately I notice people are like, oh, this person's real. Like this person's like vulnerable with me. It's a vulnerable
Mhm.
act. Be like, I'm a little nervous, but here we go, right? It's like taking a jump into the pool. Like it's gonna be fine. We're gonna swim. So I love that. So as Rob knows, a decade ago, I was in this Broadway show called War Horse at Lincoln Center, and I understudied the three main parts of the guys that were all my age. And because I was joining the cast in year 2, there was a lot of people that had already been doing it for a year. And that also meant there was a lot of people calling out regularly. So in my first week on Broadway, there was a guy that I went in for on the role, but I had never rehearsed the part on stage. And this is a Broadway show, and I get the call, and the stage manager is like, okay, so this is where the stage revolves. This is where the lift goes up. Here's your gun. That's where you die. Do you have any questions? And I was like, and but like literally the show must go on. So,
Yeah.
right. For 2,000 people. So I had to embrace imperfection, right? Like there's no perfect in this. I had to trust the people around me that they're going to carry me, whether that's Sunmaya on the back end or Rob on here or Bridget or you, Meg. We all got each other. We all support each other. Maybe that's when you're on stage. Maybe that's a familiar face of your teammate and you just look at them. Just talk to one person in the crowd, right? So those are the ones that work for me. And before I go on, whether it's here, I'll do a little mini mindfulness to just bring my energy down because I'm already a pretty energetic person. So I need to bring it actually down a notch and just get really tuned in to what's happening right here, right now. And that might be calling it out, be like, oh, I'm a little nervous. Okay, that's all right. That's a human feeling. We're all human.
That's interesting because
Exactly.
some people might have the opposite, right? I've seen people who have done jumping jacks or something before they speak. They need to get the energy up. So you kind of almost have to decide, oh, am I that kind of person that needs to bring that energy down? Do I need that mindfulness moment? Or do I need to give myself like an energy boost? However, that might be. Maybe it's coffee or maybe it's just kind of running around in place for a little bit. So I love that. And that actually segues great into my next question, which is on introverts and extroverts. Because I love this quote from RuPaul that he says he is an introvert masquerading as an extrovert. I kind of find myself in that similar spot as well. So,
Huh.
do you both consider yourselves introverts or extroverts? And what advice would you give to someone who does consider themselves an introvert who wants to speak up more? It doesn't have to be at big events like this. Maybe it's just speaking up more in their company meetings, in their department meetings or something like that. So, Hunter, what do you consider yourself, an introvert or an extrovert? And what advice would you give to someone who wants to be an introvert who wants to break out of that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, probably a lot of people would think I'm an extrovert, right? Because I have all this energy and I thrive off of other people. But I actually learned a word here at PowerToFly a few years ago during a summit live on the call, which is ambivert. And that's somewhere in between, right? And you can lean one direction, you can lean the other direction. And for me, I need my introvert time so that I can be extroverted in certain
Mhm.
scenarios. And that extroverted energy can be extremely exhausting for me if I overdo it, if I over extend myself, if I'm giving out more energy than is needed in the space. And so I need that introverted time of quiet, of relaxation to refuel the tank. And then I can be quite extroverted. So I would describe myself as an ambivert. And for folks that perhaps are more introverted, I would say do what works for you. There's going to be a lot of advice. Meg and I are going to give a lot of advice, and that works for us. And try it out, take what works, leave the rest, right? Because what works for you isn't going to work for someone else. Like you were saying, Rob, some people need to do jumping jacks, some need to do mindfulness. Maybe you need to alternate depending on where you are that day. And one thing that's really helpful that I find if I'm nervous or maybe I'm feeling more introverted. In acting, you've probably heard the oldest phrase in the book is what's my motivation, right? But in speaking terms, that can be what's the one thing I want to communicate, and take it off of myself. Because if I'm scared or feeling introverted or nervous, it's because I'm worried about what people are going to think about me, how I'm showing up. Is my voice weird? What do I do with my hands? Like all that stuff, right? But if I go to the subject and make it not about me, because it's actually usually not about me what I'm saying. I'm trying to communicate something, I'm trying to help someone. If I make it about that, then I can come out of my shell and I can be more extroverted and let everything else come what may, be what it is.
I love
No,
that.
I like
Yeah.
this.
And I think so much of us we change over time. I feel like I was more extroverted in my personal life when I was younger. Now I'm a little
Mm.
bit more introverted. Maybe I'll go back the other way. But what about you, Meg? Do you consider yourself an extrovert, introvert? And what advice would you give to someone who might be more on the introvert side of it?
So I am okay. So my answer is honestly pretty similar to Hunter's. I live with bipolar disorder. I'm bipolar too. Now, what this means for me is that I have periods of mania and periods of depression, and then I generally live somewhere in the middle. And I very much appreciate and relate to Hunter what you said about how like sometimes you need to calm down before the event starts because I might just be riding a bit of a high and having so much fun and it's a great event and they want the event to be, a success, but maybe it's a little bit more buttoned down and needs a little bit less of the what I like to affectionately call Technicolor glitter squirrel energy, and maybe needs a little bit more of just kind of a grounded, like, yeah, and we'll have a measured discussion. You laugh, you've seen it. I know you have.
I have
Like,
seen
it
it.
is
Well,
one of those things.
because I just see you as a cartoon character and off we go.
You're not wrong. I'm basically a sentient cartoon character. But no, it is one of those things. And Hunter, what you had said about that recharge, I absolutely go through this as well. I actually had a friend call me. She was like 20 minutes away from her high school reunion. And she was on the planning committee and did not find out until she left her house to go to the reunion that her planning committee assumed that she was going to make a speech when they all got there. And she had no clue she was doing this. It was a 20th high school reunion. And she called me and goes, "You talk all the time. What do I say?" And I said, "Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. I don't know anything about these people. What do you mean? What do I say? You know them. You spent 4 years with them. Like, what's going on?" And basically, what she was talking about and what was concerning her was the same thing, Rob, you said about how she was more introvert or more extroverted as as a younger person or when she was, earlier in her career or in her life. And what I tried to get her to understand is that you have now been through a ton of stuff in your life. And the surface level stuff, which is where we all basically operate in a lot of our social lives, is no longer deep enough for you. And so you don't know what to do and you don't know how to have those deep conversations because it's going to have a lot of energy that you don't have to bring to this event, right? Because you're going to be busy worrying about other stuff. And so what I told her was instead of going into this thinking, what on earth do I say to these people? Go on in understanding that whatever it is you're going to do, the interaction you're going to have is probably going to drain you in some way. It's not
Mm.
necessarily a bad thing. For me, sometimes it siphons off my extra energy. So if Aaron, my husband, is just like not really keeping up with the mania right now, I will call one of my friends and be like, let's go shopping, let's go someplace, let's go do something, right? So what I told her was instead of looking at this worried about how am I going to bring up all of this energy, think about it in terms of I know this is going to take a lot out of me, so I am going to need to recover. So, like when I host the virtual job fair, I love it. You both know I love it. I will never give it up. But it is 6.5 hours on camera straight, which can be a lot, right? Talk to any CNN host. They're not normal people. So, when I know that I'm doing this, my husband knows he is on the hook for planning dinner that night, like planning and probably shoveling it at my face, depending on how tired I am when I get done. I'm probably not going to want to talk to anybody for a couple days, and I usually want to go into some sort of like a creative something. Like I'll redo my nails, I'll do an embroidery project, something that like I can do that's quiet, creative. I get to kind of like, recharge. So I absolutely agree with you there. It's about understanding what this event is going to need from you and then what are you going to have to do to refuel on the other side? Is it a serious event? And now I need to take a step back and just kind of be goofy because I've been really guarded and watching what I've been saying for the last 3 hours? Or, and is it a situation where I come out of this and like I have to go from virtual job fair to date night with my husband? At which point I go, okay, so after date night, I'm not talking to you for 4 days. I love you so much. You're the best. But that's the thing is like knowing roughly what I might need to recover from the situation, so that that way bringing the energy to the situation doesn't have to be the worrisome part, and the worrisome part is going to come later, so you can just have fun in what you're doing right now.
Yeah, I love that. And I love, as you just were saying, Meg, that all events are not created equal. Sometimes you have those events where you kind of need to tone down your personality. Other events you need to build up your personality, and that might not just be a public event, but that might be also a group meeting as well. Sometimes
Mhm.
hey, I need to kind of take a step forward. This is a really quiet group. Other times it's like, oh, this is a very active group. Maybe I don't want to compete in that same way. So I love what
Yeah.
both of you are saying. And I wanted to talk a little bit about preparation because a lot of folks say, you kind of have to be born a great speaker. I think there's a little something to that, but I know you also really need to prepare. Preparation is a huge role. So what are some of your go-to techniques for preparing when you're hosting a talk here at our summit or something? Or maybe also any advice for someone who is going into their meeting. It's a smaller event, but they want to make sure that they feel prepared. Going back to you, Hunter, what would you say? What are some of your go-to preparations?
Sure. Well, what I love about preparation is it inherently makes me more confident, which removes any baseline insecurity or nervousness or imposter syndrome. So if I'm going to do a talk with someone, I'll go to their LinkedIn, I'll check them out, I'll talk to AI to do deeper research on them. I love that. I'll make little briefing docs for myself. If it's, let's say, more if you're leading a meeting, go over your notes to the point that you feel prepared, but you're not overly obsessing about what you're going to say. I'm more of a
Mhm.
provide bullet points as opposed to providing a script unless it needs to be a script, you know, introduction,
Yeah.
right? Like the intros here, Meg and I are mostly reading off scripts when we're introducing people, or if we're going to record a promo for a certain event and there needs to be very specific verbiage, that's one thing. And then if I'm going to be giving a presentation or a talk, I want it to have an organic, natural feel and flow to it. And that's when bullet points are super helpful because we want to prepare, or I want to prepare, and then I want to throw it away. And it's trusting that it's there, trusting that the words will come. If the words don't come or I make a mistake, it's okay. Like Meg said, acknowledge it, like, oh, oops, that was a flub. I mean this or
Yeah.
whatever. Because there's nothing worse than like making an obvious mistake and then pretending that it didn't happen. It's like a high school play when like they lean on something and it breaks and then they're just like, nope, didn't happen. Nope, still didn't happen. And you're like, that chair broke.
Well, I think it's a
The
fine line
words
because you want to
Adele
acknowledge it,
deceived.
but you don't want to dwell on it because sometimes
Yeah,
people
yeah,
dwell
yeah.
on it and then it kind of can bog down what you're trying to say. The emphasis becomes that mistake. So I think like what you're
Yes.
saying is correct. Just like acknowledge it and then move on. Like it's done, but don't live in that moment.
Yeah, don't dwell on it. And if you don't acknowledge it, you'll probably be dwelling on it in your head.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
then you're going to mess up more of what you're saying and you're not present anymore. And it just like the train goes off the rails.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And how about
Yeah.
you, Meg? What are you doing to prepare?
Well, okay, so anybody that thinks that public speakers are born that way has seen like maybe two people public speak, because like there are absolutely people on this planet that you have seen. They get up, they are oh my gosh, they're magnetic. They never have a misstep. They hit every single point. It's like it's fabulous, right? You are not seeing somebody do something off the cuff. You're not. You're absolutely not. And even if that person was amazing the first time they ever spoke, that was an experience that they are then building on. Okay. So I say it a ton in every chat that I am in. If you are looking at somebody who knows how to do something well, you are looking at somebody that has failed a lot. Okay. You're looking at somebody who has mispronounced names, who has flubbed their lines, who has forgotten the name of the person that they were interviewing, forgotten the company that was sponsoring the chat, even though it was posted all over my notes. I'm telling you, these are the things. So when you're seeing somebody that feels like a very dynamic speaker, you're seeing somebody that's messed up a lot. But the other part of it is when you are thinking about being a good public speaker, you're thinking in terms of like the upper level of orators, right? Most of the time, okay, think about it this way. Everybody generally has been to a wedding. Everybody's generally heard kind of a blah wedding speech. You don't generally remember those. You remember the horrific car crash and you don't tend to remember the rest, right? So that middle area, that gray area is massive. And there are so many avenues within that for how to be a speaker that how to prepare is also just as massive. So if we're going to cut it down to like a couple things, like Hunter said, I researched the person that I'm interviewing. So I will go on their LinkedIn. I haven't done the AI thing, but now I'm absolutely going to. So thank you, Hunter, for that one. So I will go in, I set a timer on my phone and I research the person for 15 minutes. And if at the end of 15 minutes, I still have more stuff that I want to learn about them, I set another timer for 5 and then I have to stop myself because otherwise I will just fall down that rabbit hole and not learn more about the topic. The other part of it is what you're speaking on. So most of the stuff that I host, I am pretty much supposed to be that person who's new to the subject. So I get to stand in place of the person who might be new to the subject and wants to participate but doesn't want to bring down the topic of the discussion. So I tend to go into it with that kind of understanding so that way if I need to bring my knowledge of the subject matter up, I do it, but like to a reasonable level. And then the other thing I like to do is I like to, if possible, meet the person before we get to talk, even if it's only for that 10-minute prep call before the event starts. Because for me, that getting to speak with the other person and understand like, are they a talkative person? Am I going to get to hold back in this? Or am I going to have to keep coming up and like prompting them for another another statement or hey can you elaborate on that, it's just it's getting that feel for what I want the conversation to be. And Hunter's exactly right as well. If you want something more formal and you're very specific about your words, then yeah, write everything out. But if it's not a formal situation, don't drive yourself crazy with getting your words right. Go with bullet points. It's a lot easier for yourself. And then very last thing, no one else knows what it sounds like inside your head except for you. Okay. Nobody else knows what you wanted to say and how eloquent you wanted to be. So anything that comes out of your mouth is gratis to them because they don't know what you were planning on saying. So
Yeah.
that's all I got.
I mean, as a not as someone who's also acted but not nearly as successful as Hunter, I mean, the one thing they always tell you all the time is like if you go up on your line, most of the people in the audience are not going to know what the line was supposed to be. So whatever comes out of your mouth is going to be okay as long as it's like continuing moving forward. So I love that. And the other thing I'd add to this is if you're leading a meeting, I would put together an agenda beforehand. I love to put together some slides with going back to our keywords and bullet points. Put this is what this meeting's going to be about. Send it out to everyone in advance. That way, like everyone gets to see it, and no one maybe is going to kind of derail your conversation like from the start. Everyone can kind of see what, oh, this is what we're going to talk about. So I love that. That kind of helps center me there.
Well, and then it's not, it enables you to kind of keep the meeting on track, right? It gives you guardrails. So even if you get really excited and talking about one question that someone brings up, then you know where you're going with this. And if you think people don't have guidelines for meetings, you're wrong. Okay. Everybody does them, so you might as well. Don't pretend like you don't need to write things down. It's a weird flex. You don't need to make it. Like just keep the notes in front of you. It's a lot easier on everyone.
And before we run out of time, I wanted to talk a bit about one thing that I really think has to come with a practice, which is when you don't have a script at all. And I know both of you and myself, like we've all had those times when we've been in events where it's like we've used up all of our questions. Now we have to come up with new questions, or suddenly there's a new speaker who is joined at the last minute because somebody got sick. So you did that research on the other person and now there's somebody there. So of course, I think a lot of people can handle scripts, a lot of people can handle bullet points, but like, what do you do when you have to kind of completely, quote unquote, wing it in a moment there, or someone starts, talking off mic when they shouldn't, and you want to interrupt them, but you also don't want to interrupt them because that's rude. Like, Meg, what have you done in those kind of situations?
Okay. Guidelines for when things go bad. The first one is telling the people that are in the event, especially if it's like an event or something, like here's what's going to happen
Mhm.
if it goes wrong, because people want to know that you have thought of the troubleshooting, right? Nobody wants to feel like if something goes wrong, no one likes to feel like there isn't a plan. Like I don't know what to do now. Okay. So calling it out in advance, like we tell our audience members, like if you get kicked out of the meeting, you can always rejoin us. So don't panic if you get kicked out of the meeting. So okay, great, right? So that's a really good one. The other thing that I I like to tell people is if you over prepare, like we were talking about in terms of things like notes, that will always serve you well if you then run out of things, because you can always either, depending on what you're, trying to fill time, you can either go back to previous like questions or something that you want to like dive more in depth on. I'll go back if we run out of questions towards the end of an event. I'll go back and say like, oh, hey, we had a ton of questions on this subject area that we covered 20 minutes ago. Let's pull one more question from there. I also always go into every event with 5 evergreen questions that I keep in my back pocket. It's stuff like, if people only take one thing from today's event, what do you want that one thing they remember to be? What is a question that no one ever asks you about your job, but they really should ask? Like truly, you can Google these also, by the way, y'all. I got these from like a website. So you can Google these questions, but over prepare and give yourself a little bit of an emergency pack, let's say.
Mhm.
Hunter, how do you feel about this? Do you have stuff like this too?
Oh, 100%. My version of that question that you asked there is, what did I forget to ask you?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Seen
I
me do
love
that one a
that
few
one.
times, right?
Yeah.
What did you wish I had asked that I haven't asked? Variations of that. It's a different version of what's the one thing you want people to take away. But I've also noticed that when I make it about the here and now and between me and you, it's a little disarming and
Mhm.
finding that in a good way, right? Because it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, let
You
me
get
think
real
about
answers
what,
from people.
yeah, they have to think about what we've talked about as opposed to what I like to describe as we all have our stump speech, right? And we all have like
Mhm.
our go-to things, and those are really important. Like I have my list, depending on the event, I will perhaps if it's a tap dance, like someone's late or whatever. Great, let's talk
Yep.
about the job fair. Let's talk about the previous
All the
top,
extra stuff.
what's
Previous
coming
topics,
up,
yeah.
and that way we can keep it fresh, add value, keep it moving, and also call for support. It'll be like,
Yes. Call for support. And honestly, don't be afraid to say that you're filling time, because sometimes it's a lot easier for your audience to understand, like, oh, hey, we've got such and such coming up in a couple minutes. So that way they know what they're waiting for.
yes,
They'll give you a little bit more grace if you're trying to fill time.
yeah, 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 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would definitely say like these are the kind of things where it does take a lot of time and practice. So I do think there are things you don't need the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours to do, but
Yes.
that is kind of one of the things that I do think it really does help. So for anyone who wants to speak more in public speaking or in their meetings, just start with the little steps there and then
And ask.
and yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah, if this is something you're interested in doing, tell people. The only
yes,
reason I ended up hosting for Power to Fly was because I told Lauren Haggerty and Mariella back in the day that if they ever needed an event covered, I was really interested in it, and I thought it was a really cool program.
yeah, and same thing with meetings. Tell your supervisor, tell
Yes.
your manager, hey, I would love to give a presentation on such and such, and kind of stand up there, because that's the other thing is sometimes, for myself even, I have to remind myself, oh, take a step back in meetings, let other people kind of speak forward,
Oh,
and sometimes
I'm
if you
telling myself this
dominate those
constantly.
meetings, it's
Yeah.
harder there.
And on that note, if you're in a position of power, before a meeting, nominate people, be like,
Yes,
hey, Meg,
Yes.
I think you have a lot of potential. Would you be interested in hosting the
I
next
love
meeting
that.
or this section, and giving people these
Mhm.
opportunities to try it out in a low stakes environment so they can grow and break out of their shell.
Hmm.
And if you're the kind of person that wants to think about things before you like speak on them in a meeting, bring notes about something that was said in the last meeting, like, hey, such and such that you said actually really stuck with me, and I did this with that information, and this is what happened. It's a good way to start speaking up and getting your voice heard in a way that doesn't feel so high pressure because it's about something that happened the last meeting, but you're like closing the loop on it, or giving people a little bit more information. Hey, I learned this, something like that.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much. This was such great advice, even for myself. I speak a lot, but it's good to be reminded of some of these things and certainly some stuff that I'm going to take into my own practice. And this also segues great into our next talk because we have two professional speakers, folks that speak all the time and are both brilliant. So I am going to leave this to you, Hunter and Meg, to bring up our next speakers. But we will see you at the rest of the summit today, and of course, tomorrow and at our job fair later this week. So, sending it over to you all, and have a great rest of the summit.